That's the best view I've had in days. That would be Massachusetts. I don't know about you, but I think this is just stunning scenery from the trail. And you never know when you're going to get moments like this, but I wanted to put it down. When people talk about their favorite places on the AT, you hardly ever hear anybody say Massachusetts. But I think it has some exquisite scenery, even though it's not many miles and it's a very narrow corridor. I think it's very beautiful. They have some fabulous trees, really big trees, and I just thought I'd share that with you. I'll turn around and see what it looks like from the other direction. Not bad. I think this is better. Well, for about the last hour and a half, the trail has just looped up and down and made U-turns and around. Everything looks the same, and yet nothing looks the same. It's like being trapped in a scene from Alice in Wonderland. It's pretty bizarre. Very eerie, and I'm not sure how much more of this there is, but it feels like I'm in a maze and there's no escape. I don't know what the goal was. It would be interesting to have a topographic map and follow it, but can't be too much longer. We'll see. Ooh-wee. I'm not used to so much human interaction. I met a bunch of people this morning, but looks like it's clear trail right now. I'm going through a field. So I met a couple of trail maintainers, and I met a woman who was section hiking, and another hiker that I didn't talk to. He looked like a day hiker. He had a real small pack. But the interesting one was a fella named, well, I probably shouldn't give his name. He probably wouldn't like that. We'll just call him, whoops, George. Anyhow, George is homeless, and he's been on the trail, he said, since October 23. And George is the third homeless person I have met on the trail this year. There was one down in Georgia. There was one who was squatting at a shelter in Connecticut. And then George. In 2019, I didn't meet any homeless people. So It looks like it's becoming a thing, but I don't know that it's really a problem. The guy that was squatting at the shelter, that is bad. That's a problem. But if you're hiking, what can you say? It was interesting. George had a certain plan when he asked for assistance. He began with water. And then he asked if I had any extra food, and then he asked if I had any extra fuel, and finally he asked for money. And but he was kind enough and didn't pose a threat at all. And I just thought I'd point that out. You know, that's a marked change in the time that I last hiked the trail. We'll see how it goes out west. I doubt I'll encounter any more homeless people as I go north, but heck, who would have guessed you'd meet a homeless person in Massachusetts? A summit vista in Massachusetts. I don't know if those are the Berkshire Mountains or not, but the little community down there is pretty classic New England. I thought it worthwhile shooting this because I haven't seen sun in 4 or 5 days, and it's nice to see it. There's a guy in Massachusetts who does trail maintenance, and he does it with an axe. I call him the Axe Man. Well, that one's covered with snow. But that's a pine tree. It's about 12 inches in diameter, maybe a little more. I've seen red oaks that he did with an axe that were bigger than that. Using an axe is a skill that is dying. As important as knowing how to swing it and work it is how to sharpen it. It's not just about getting the right or getting a sharp edge. It's about the contours and the angles of the cutting edge. And when you get that right, you can really make some big chunks and make quick work of a log, relatively quick work. Most people out here use chainsaws unless it's a wilderness area. Seems like there's more wilderness areas down south than up here. But I don't know who the Axe Man is, but he's pretty incredible. I've seen his work for miles along here, and haven't seen that too much in any other states. It's warming up a little, not much. The sun is a welcome addition to my hiking endeavors. All right. So we're making our way down, probably only to go back up again. Good morning. I'm trying something new. We'll see how it works. I got my camera strapped to, or attached to my chest strap, so you can just walk along with me. It is 18 degrees this morning here in Massachusetts, and that's kind of helping me. The trail I'm on now is sort of boggy, you'll see, and the stagnant pools are frozen, so you can walk through them, many of them, without getting your feet wet. But I wanted to talk to you about a guy in Kentucky. Paul Hayes was employed in the horse transportation business, and it was not a necessarily steady work, and he would revert to petty crime at times to support his family, and so he did have a criminal record. And in this particular case, he had forged a check, and it was a felony offense, I guess, but it was complicated, and I don't know all the details, but somebody had the check and didn't have ID and asked Paul to cash it for him or something like that. Anyhow, the check was for $88 and some cents. So he got caught, and the prosecuting attorney offered him a plea deal. And that's the subject of this little talk, is plea deals. So the prosecuting attorney said, look, if you admit to this crime, I'll sentence you to just 5 years in prison. Well, Paul Hayes thought that was a lot for $88 and change, and he and his defense attorney decided to fight it. So they went to court, and of course they lost, and instead of 5 years, his sentence was, as a habitual offender, that's what the prosecutor called him, his sentence was life in prison. So there's some habitual offenders, like Lindsay Lohan. It's a different world for her than it was for Paul Hayes. And I would argue that repeat DUI offenses are far more serious than petty crimes like shoplifting, writing a bad check, or theft. I mean, DUI, you're putting entire families at risk. But that's the nature of plea deals. Plea deals are actually not, or plea bargains, whatever you want to call it. Okay, here's a big pond. We're gonna have to skirt around it. They're not deals. When you hear that thing, or the phrase plea deal or plea agreement or plea bargain, it sounds like you're discussing some kind of bargaining or negotiation, and that's not the case. The prosecutor holds all the cards, and it's basically a take it or leave it situation. So plea deals and plea bargains are not just a feature of our criminal justice system today. They are the criminal justice system. And upwards of 92% to 98%, I think I've said that before, of all criminal trials end in plea agreements. And all too often, innocent people will plead guilty just for the reason that Paul Hayes, this looks slippery, just to avoid the situation Paul Hayes found himself in. And you might blame defense attorneys. Well, they shouldn't have their clients take the plea deal. Well, first of all, they're required by law to present a plea bargain if one is offered. And two, they just simply don't have the resources to do justice to a case. So often, in truth, the best thing they can offer their clients is to accept the plea bargain. In Harris County, Texas, some people call that's Houston, they call that the death capital of the world. There are 3 prosecuting attorneys for every defense attorney. The prosecuting attorneys have a staff of 30 investigators. Defense attorneys have none. So you see the cards are stacked against the defendant. Sure, there's some guilty people, maybe a plea deal is good for them, and they get off lighter than they really should. But I don't know that that's the case. I know innocent people that have to plead guilty to avoid insanely large sentences. It's not a good deal for them. So there's been some talk about how this is terrible. Plea deals are terrible. Our country was set up based on the trial system and judged by a jury of your peers. And jury boxes are sitting empty. They're just a vestige of what the criminal justice system once was. So in Alaska, there's a governor, I think his name was Avrum, A-V-R-U-M, Gross. You'll have to check me on that. But he got rid of plea bargaining. People have always said, if we get rid of plea deals, the courts will be overwhelmed. Some people call the plea bargains the rocket docket. And they've even streamlined it to the point where they do plea deals by Zoom. So nobody even has to show up in court. So anyhow, Avrum Gross in Alaska stopped plea bargaining. Well, life didn't end there. The courts continued on. What happened was, prior to the abolition of plea deals, prosecuting attorneys turned down only 4% of cases. So there were 4% of cases they deemed not worthy. They were just trivial and insignificant and not really of any value to the public interest. So after they got rid of plea deals, that number jumped to 44%. So what happened was, police had to do a better job of, this collapsed. Police had to do a better job of investigating, and prosecutors had to be more selective of the cases they took, and judges had to show up on time and do their job. This doesn't apply to Charles's case because he was not offered a plea deal, obviously, and there's a lot more to be said about plea deals, but I thought Paul Hayes' case was worthy as a starting point. And he did get parole eventually, so he didn't serve an entire life sentence in jail or in prison. But I think it's shameful to sentence somebody to 88 or a life in prison for an $88 check. I mean, he was no Lily White Rose, and he'll be the first to admit that. But if Lindsay Lohan can have multiple DUIs and drug charges and spend a max, I think she spent a max of 2 weeks or 2 months, something like that, in jail, then how is that fair that Paul Hayes got life? Okay, I've rambled enough, and you've seen some of the trail in Massachusetts. This is a little deceptive. This is extremely level terrain. Extremely level for what I've been encountering. So I stayed at October Mountain Shelter last night, and I'm hoping to get to Dalton for lunch. That's a true trail town. Most of the so-called trail towns you have to hitchhike into. This one, the trail actually goes through it, just like Duncannon, Pennsylvania, and Damascus, Virginia, and Hot Springs, North Carolina. All right, well, on the march. Thanks for listening. I hope my chest thing worked. Talk at you later. Here we are on Warner Hill. That mountain way off in the distance there is probably Mount Greylock, which is where I'll be climbing, and then from there it goes into Vermont. Yes, those are gators and microspikes. We got 6 to 7 inches last night, and that's okay. I've got about a mile climb to the top of Mount Greylock, and then it's all downhill. And I'm getting off trail for a day. Well, I guess you'd call that a Nero, because it's been, I think, 10 or 11 days, and I really need to recharge and so forth. So enough snow that the rocks are hidden, but not enough that they're really leveled, so they can kind of trip me. So I got to be careful. And the trail here hasn't been maintained in a while, so lots of, especially ash trees down across the trail. All right, on my way. Let's see, there it is. That's the war memorial in the background at the summit of Mount Greylock. So now I can officially say Greystoke has met Greylock, and it's time to push on. This is one of the most storied spots in all of hiking. This is the start of the Long Trail, which was, even though it's only 273 miles, it was the first long distance trail constructed for recreation in the country. And this was the inspiration for Benton Mackay to come up with his Appalachian Trail proposal. So it's really cold and snowy, and I'd like to talk more, but it's not going to happen. Yesterday I was off trail. Actually, I had a short day, just 10 miles. And I've been on trail for just under 2 weeks without ever sleeping in a bed or getting a shower. And it was about time, and I needed a good resupply. So I got picked up, went to a big box store to pick up supplies, and much to my surprise, somebody complimented me on my look. I thought, what? And at first I thought they were joking or being sarcastic, but clearly they meant what they said. So my look was leggings with gaiters and my hiking boots, and I had a hoodie on, the alpaca hoodie, and my rain jacket that I'm wearing right now today, and I had a buff around my neck and crazy wild hair. So who would have thought I'm starting a fashion trend? But it looks to be the case at age 70. I've struck a nerve among the younger generation. I got to get around that so you can join me. But I just went past a shelter called Congdon in Vermont, and the peculiar thing is there was a tent set up in the shelter, and it's 2:30 in the afternoon. There are no tracks leading to the shelter from either direction. So that person has been there since yesterday at least. And when I pulled up, I said, "Hello? Is anybody in there?" And no answer. And then I got closer and I said, "If someone's in there, are you okay?" And a male voice said, "Yeah, I'm all right." So I have no idea I have no definite idea what's going on. Maybe he's a hiker and he just got sick. But I suspect it's yet another homeless person. And that makes homeless person number 4. So maybe this is a seasonal thing. And before the thru-hikers come out, they find refuge in the shelters. It's been an eye-opener for me. 4. And it's unusual that 3 of the 4 have been up in the Northeast. And that guy was less than friendly, that's for sure. Good morning. It's the 13th of April, and I'm going up Glastonbury Mountain from Bennington, Vermont. I wanted to talk a little bit about bail this morning. Bail was originally a system that was designed to hold people charged with a crime accountable for showing up for court appearances. And instead it's turned into a punishment for being poor. And that's literally the case. Basically what bail is depending on the crime, a certain amount of money is held in escrow by the courts. So, for example, if you jumped a turnstile at a subway station, the bail might be relatively low, like $500, I don't know. If you committed or you're charged with committing a robbery, it might be thousands of dollars, but nevertheless, if you have the money to pay the bail, then you remain free, and you're still obligated to go to your court hearings, and if you don't, why, they'll keep the money. You lost all that money. But if you do your duty and make your court appearances, they give the money right back to you. So for people of means, wealthy people, or even moderate incomes, it's no big deal. They usually have some money in savings, and they put that money up, and they're out until the court appearance. And so it goes. But if you don't have bail money, and you're not willing to go to a bail bondsman, which is a kind of a scam thing, if you ask me. I mean, they claim to provide a service, but at a pretty high cost. Anyhow, then you go to jail until your court hearing, which could be days, weeks, months, sometimes longer than months. So basically, every school kid knows the expression innocent until proven guilty. Well, we have 500,000 people sitting in jails right now that are convicted of no crimes other than being poor enough that they can't afford bail. And it's a 1-2 whammy, because after sitting in jail for several months, when the prosecutor comes to you with a plea deal, even if you're innocent, you're tired of being in jail. So that plea deal looks pretty good. And so as a consequence, lots of people will plead guilty when they are in fact innocent. This gets back to a TED Talk I watched by an attorney named Robin Steinberg. She and her husband are defense attorneys, and they got really tired of watching this happen to their clients, simply because, they were too poor to make bail. They came up with the idea of starting a fund. They're from the Bronx, so they called it the Bronx Freedom Fund. They solicited money from charitable organizations, this seed money that would go toward paying bail for poor people. So here's some interesting math. It's pretty shocking. But prior to the Freedom Fund, 90% of these people would plead guilty. After the Freedom Fund, 50% of the people, the charges were dropped. They didn't even have to go to court. I think only 2% of the people ever received any sentence at all. And then the final figure is, you would think that if these people were crooks, that they would just skip bail. But it only happened to 2 to 4% of the people that would skip bail. So it was an overwhelming success. Okay, well, I broke trail for 19 miles yesterday, and it looks like I'm gonna break trail for over 20 today. Nobody has come this way. I got up here to Glastonbury Wilderness and found that the blazes are non-existent. I found a few faint shadows of blazes that are probably, I don't know, a decade or more old. But I guess they don't believe in it, even though this is where the 2 by 6 inch white blazes originated. And my problem started when I got into areas where the snow drifted, and I could no longer see the little dimple in the trail. It's pretty tough going through the snow. It's kind of like walking in wet concrete. I was using a GPS phone app far out, and I will admit I'm not super competent with that. In this case, it would be rather difficult to use a map and compass with the precision that I need. And so I have opted to turn around and go back and cut my losses. So I'm about 10 miles in, and I got 10 miles back. As I'm hiking along, I got to thinking about something Charles said, and I think it's a very wise comment. He was talking about when he was a young man and how being a street kid, he had to defend himself, and his method of defending himself was fighting. And so we were talking about fighting, and he said that being a good fighter has little to do with your fighting moves or how hard you can hit. He said the most important thing about being a good fighter is to be able to take a punch. And if you could take a punch, that's 90% of it. And I thought, wow, that is so wise. And so that's what I'm going to think of today. I mean, I could look at it like, well, that's a 20-mile hike through dense, nasty snow, and with lots of down trees and no blazes, and moan about it. But I'm going to take Charles' approach and say, hey, it was just a punch, and I'm going to get up and keep going and do everything I can to make this happen. And I've talked about it before, that for this to happen, I need to really focus on hiking and minimize the messing around. And certainly this rates is messing around. I mean, blazing trail through snow drifts for 30 or 40 miles over the last couple days, and that's not what I'm into. And the conditions could change drastically if the weather warmed and we got some rain. All the snow would go away and it'd be a completely different story. And that's what I found down south. You know, I'd hike one day and have a bunch of down branches loaded with snow, and a day or two later, whoop, all the snow would be melted and the trail would be wide open. So we're going to just consider this another of many punches, and I'll reevaluate and get a new plan and carry on.